If I could choose to just wake up and realize I was living the first episode of an anime, I'd probably choose Akebi's sailor uniform. I'm not sure I've ever seen something so achingly, deliberately pleasant, so specifically tuned to giving the most awesome aesthetic interpretation of reality that it supposes something close enough to the truth to relate to it, and yet heightened to an impossible consistency. It feels like a highlight reel of all the most awesome places you ever could have lived and the best looking, most physically capable things you ever could have done, had your life been as close to perfect as possible. It makes the real world look like a place worth escaping to, even though an unedited experience of reality could never compare as a rapid experience of aesthetic satisfaction. The 4 hours you can spend with this show are the limits of what you'll ever get to see into this best version of something resembling reality. Okay, I'm obviously being a little over the top, but the mountainous imagery of the show's introduction is as close as animation has come to capturing the images constantly floating in the back of my mind when I think about all the road trips I've taken to places I need to get back to. The fact that our main character proceeds to do some gymnastics like a TikTok parkour girl that I would watch to get motivation to work out every once in a while only drew me further into the feeling like this is basically just what I would be doing if my life was where I wanted it to be. Add to that her wonderful, loving, supportive, and clearly very successful family with a badass mom whose facial expression beams with victorious pride for what she's accomplished for them, their incredible house, and the fact that her mom custom tailors her a badass sailor uniform to start school with, even though it's technically not the school's uniform and they just let her wear it anyways, and I couldn't imagine having a stronger start to your high school experience. Honestly, I teared up a little at the part when her little sister tells her that she has nothing to fear because she's so cool, and then doubles down saying, "You don't really believe me, do you? You have to believe it." The first thing Akebi-chan ends up seeing when she gets to school is a girl that showed up early out of nervousness and is clipping her toenails and sniffing the clippers. So she knows right away she's not the weirdest person in class, and it gives her a big confidence boost. Obviously, she frames that a little bit more kindly than I just did, though, because unlike a real person like me, Akebi-chan isn't a mean-spirited asshole. Wisely, she also uses her class introduction as an opportunity to explain the story of her school uniform. If there's something about you that stands out, the most charismatic choice you can make is always going to be to address it and frame it for others to be comfortable with as soon as possible. Unfortunately, she then kinda overshoots and gets a little showy, not realizing she's borderline upskirting everyone. This right here has got to be one of the most powerful pieces of Glasses Girl animation I've ever seen. Akebi-chan remembers and reiterates this girl's name a few times because she's been taking notes on everyone in class and really trying to learn about and befriend them. Whereas I can't even be fucked to learn a character's name till they've done something that makes me like them. In many ways, this show is like a guidebook to living your best life and being a decent person. And I wish I could have seen it right before starting high school. If this had existed somehow and been available to me when I was 14, I unironically think it could have been a very positive influence on how I approached interacting people with that point forward. You can watch this show and see, factually, how if you are not running home repeating the names of all your classmates after the first day of school, you are not working as hard as you could to make friends there. Something I had never understood until I was already out of high school was that other people were always paying attention to me. I spent all of high school pretty dissociated and didn't pay attention to anyone unless they were into anime or kept making eye contact with me. I stood out a lot by looking completely alien, and I'm sure everyone had an opinion of me at school, but I wasn't really aware of it because I didn't know what anyone's impression was. Akebi-chan's writer is acutely aware of the nature of school as a stage where impressions are what carry you between interactions. Akebi-chan running home at the end of episode 2 gets her scouted by athletic clubs at the start of episode 3, and that interaction sparks others to be interested and involved with her as well. Every action creates a chain reaction, and the more active that someone is, the more interactions will come out of that activity. For someone like me, interactions are generally stressful because I'm not very well practiced at them, and I've continued avoiding them because of it, thus never developing the skills. Whereas Akebi-chan is someone utterly determined to be having interactions, and is importantly not so much confidence that her interactions will go well, but that she is determined enough to keep trying until it becomes successful. Episode 3 finally sort of acknowledges that Akebi-chan is downright heroic as a human being by letting us into the heads of more relatable and regular characters, like the quieter and more guarded girl who ends up getting into a hilarious selfie scenario with her thanks to their budding friendship. I also appreciate the shake-up in perspective here, because as lovable as Akebi-chan is, it's hard to make her the center of compelling emotional drama when we know that she's going to pull through and succeed, because she's just the ultimate girl Chad. How others react to her is harder to predict, and the way this scenario goes from Akebi-chan lightly trying to open up this girl's shell to the girl accidentally thrusting it open as loudly as possible with a send button press is incredibly fun to watch. In the second half of the episode, we see a kind of pattern emerge. Akebi-chan hangs out with a classmate for a while, develops chemistry with them, and then leads them deeper and deeper into an unguarded and kind of embarrassing moment, which bonds them to her in a way that they wouldn't really want anyone else knowing about. Nothing is more powerful to a relationship than a shared secret, and especially one that represents a pleasant memory. When I watch a show like this that seems to understand human nature and what people want almost too well, I have this nagging cynicism like the show's reminding me I'm a human computer and my emotions are just a code language any artist can write in and run a program through if they understand it. What I'm trying to say is that this show is so good, I think it can teach you something about social engineering, because it so successfully devises natural feeling but dramatically heightened moments. These days, it's honestly rare that I find anime which I enjoy watching at normal speed more than I prefer to watch it sped up. But Akebi-chan is a show that I'm happy to scroll back and rewatch parts of right after seeing them. It just feels good to watch, which is really what I'm looking for out of a show at the end of the day. Episode 4 basically follows a full day of Akebi and Kei befriending Toko and just casually hanging out, having conversations, and getting to know one another naturally. The characters are just so easy to like and have such instant chemistry thanks to Akebi-chan's pleasantness greasing the wheels and letting everyone else have more believably flawed personalities that I felt like the episode could last all day and I wouldn't mind, which I'm sure is underselling the huge effort in directing, storyboarding, animating, and editing that had to go into keeping an audience member like me with an insanely fickle attention span consistently engaged. My only real complaints with Akebi-chan's Sailor uniform are complaints with reality. It's a shame that the main way a young person makes friends is through school, because I would have rather spent 0 time looking at the inside of a school building, no matter how appealingly rustic, and 100% more time watching this blonde girl fidget on a bench in this cute-ass fishing gear. This whole scene is just adorable, and I think these splash images of Akebi-chan's precious moments distill the appeal of the show pretty well. It's kind of like an art book, except I'll actually look at it, because it passively happens on screen and I don't gotta flip pages or nothing. I tend to like anime about achievably aspirational characters, and also about the ways that interactions and interpersonal influence affects how people grow. And Akebi-chan is about as focused in these regards as I've ever seen a show in this genre. It's like My Little Pony Friendship is Magic for teens, in that it doesn't have to spell out the friendship messages and can have more nuanced interactions that might not be appropriate to a kid's show, but aren't raunchy or risque in a way that would be off-putting to audiences a little younger than adults. If I had a kid going into high school or transferring during middle school who was at all interested in this kind of cutesy, slow-paced slice-of-life comedy, I would absolutely want them to see this show on their way to that experience. I expect to read comments on this video from people who consider Akebi-chan's Sailor uniform as their favorite anime of the year or decade so far, and probably even some who will call it their favorite of all time. I was advised to watch it with many comparisons to K-On! In the comments on my video about My Dress Up Darling, and I think that comparison is extremely apt. In fact, the original manga's author, Hiro, actually contributed to the K-On! Anthology comic back when the show was still coming out. I think that if we're just talking about the first season, Akebi-chan is kinda much better. It's a lot more directed in its writing and feels more consistent both tonally and in quality. K-On! Accomplishes a whole ton in the breadth of its second season and film, which Akebi-chan's 12 episodes can hardly stock up to in impact for me, but that isn't because it lacks the potential. I would absolutely watch as much of this show as its creators felt the drive to produce. I think Studio Cloverworks and relatively inexperienced director Kuroki Miyuki-san have successfully carried the torch from K-On! Better than any other show that's attempted to do something similar in the intervening year. Even the insert songs are nice and listenable. Akebi-chan's visuals aren't always cranked up to 11, but they at least sit at a comfortable baseline 8. Not all of the stories and characters are super memorable, but they're incredibly watchable, to the point I could easily see rewatching the show and becoming more endeared to all the characters after picking up on more of the small details of what makes them distinct. The show does have a pretty big cast and tries to focus on one interaction at a time, so there's only a couple of girls we really get to spend a decent amount of time with in this season, but none of that time feels wasted or boring for what it is. Inevitably, I don't think Akebi-chan can expect the explosive success of a Komi-san wa Kamyusho, which had a similar concept and structure, but a much more comedic and over-the-top focus compared to the down-tempo, settled-in pacing of Akebi-chan's Sailor Uniform. But I'll also say that as slice-of-life healing anime go, this was the least boring one that I can remember. I do think this is a show that could have individual scenes broken down in depth to analyze their writing, directing, editing, and overall construction, but I don't want to get too deep into all that here because I think this show is only just starting to be recognized, and I'm more interested in recommending it to more people than I am in dissecting it down to its parts as of yet. This is one we can hold on to, watch again, and chew slowly, letting the flavors pour over our tongues and really considering what these gourmet chefs cooked up for us. Where I can confidently blast through most seasonal anime in an afternoon, scribble out 10 or 15 minutes of script, and know that I'll never have anything to say about it again, Akebi-chan's Sailor Uniform is a show I actually want to have a relationship with. And I'm inviting you all in on it because I'm nowhere near enough of a friend to deserve keeping the angelic Akebi-chan all to myself. Akebi-chan's Sailor Uniform is my favorite show about cute girls doing cute things in a very long time, and a can't-miss installation for fans of the genre. It's not as casually carefree as Azumanga Daioh or Lucky Star, and it doesn't have the incredible exploration of group chemistry we got from Hidamari Sketch or K-On!, the innocent charm of Ojamajo Doremi, or the deeper themes which each of those stories would later touch on, but it does have its own unique atmosphere and appeal, and characters with personalities that aren't generic or immediately comparable to other anime casts. The chemistry here is totally unique and develops naturally and kind of feels like a revelation after too many years watching people try to exactly duplicate the tropes that had already been done in the genre. I think it'll take more seasons before I could put Akebi-chan's head on the Mount Rushmore of moe, but she absolutely deserves to be a part of the conversation. Akebi-chan no Sailor Fuku gets a 9 out of 10 from me. I've been Trixie the Golden Witch. Subscribe to goldenwitch.substack.com for more of my writing and exclusive podcasts, or support me on patreon.com/goldenwitchfire and find me at Golden Witch Fire on all social media and payment platforms. Thanks again for watching, and never forget, anime forever.